It's a humble request to all the participants to rename themselves. The person who joined from the name SUM, kindly rename yourself, please. The person who has joined from the name SUM, please kindly rename yourselves. It's a humble request to the mediator 1, code 09 to join the breakout room, please.
Hi, welcome. I'm just checking in on your information. Mediator 1 is your team. Am I right to think that your team number is 29 and mediator 2 is your team number 100? Would that be correct?
Yes, ma'am.
Oh, thank you so much. We have 29, we have 100. How many people are in this tournament? Do you know?
Ma'am, I believe there were a total of 100 teams in the beginning, which were divided into 50-50, and that.
Wonderful. Absolutely wonderful. Hello as well. And client counsel, I'm seeing that you are team number 91, and are you client counsel 1 or 2? Could you help us with that, please?
Sure, we are the requesting party.
Requesting.
So
Yeah. Thank you for that correction.
thank you.
And you are team number 91, and you are the requesting party.
That's correct. Thank you.
Thank you. And hello, team 3 as well. And you are the responding party. It's lovely to have everyone here.
It's lovely to be here as well.
Yeah. We want you all to relax. We know that you're in the finals. Congratulations for coming to this level. We want you to relax and try your best, but relax. We're excited to be your judges. This is a really interesting role play with many levels, and I'm really excited to see how you manage all this information.
Thanks
Thank
a
you
lot.
so much.
Mhm.
It's a humble request to all the participants to turn on their videos. So a very peaceful and productive good afternoon to all the respected judges and participants. So first of all, congratulations for making this far and all the very best for the final round. So since all the participants are here, with the permission of our respected judges, shall we begin the session?
I just want to know what is the number of mediator 2 is in the chat box is coming as 011, on the screen is coming as 100.
I'm 100, sir. SKMC 100.
So
Okay.
it's SKMC 100.
100. So chat box is coming 011.
Sorry for
Okay.
that, sir.
Yeah. Okay, fine. So, yeah, please continue.
May we start, sir?
Please.
Thank you, sir. Just to be clear, am I completely audible and visible to everyone present here?
Yes, you are.
Thank you, thank you. First of all, I would like to warmly welcome both of the parties to this mediation session, which is between Yalib and Yakut as the requesting party and Tejip and Seri as the responding parties. I hope that everyone is doing well. Firstly, I would like to go for a brief round of introductions of the parties. Starting from myself, this is Sanskriti Makwana, and I'll be serving you in the capacity of one of your mediators for the day, alongside my co-mediator Pooja. I'd like the requesting party to go next, if that's all right.
Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, wherever you may be. My name is Faith, and I am the representative of Yalib and Yakut, and I'm joined here by my trusted counsel, Audrey.
Hi everyone, my name is Audrey and I'm representing Yalib and Yakut as their legal counsel. It's really great to be seeing everyone here today.
A very good afternoon to everyone. Good afternoon, Faith and Audrey. My name is Paritoshika, and today I'll be representing Teachers and Sariq. And on their behalf, I have the authority to make binding decisions today.
Very good afternoon to everybody present here. I'm the counsel representing Tejip and Sariq, and my name is Ishita.
Thank you. Just to check with the requesting party, you do have the authority to make binding decisions on behalf of Yalib and Yakut, right?
Yes, we do have authority to settle today.
Thank you. Thank you for the confirmation. So my understanding here is that we'll all be proceeding on a first name basis. Is that all right?
Yes.
Thank you.
Now I understand that both of the parties present here have some very pressing issues, international issues to discuss here today. Nevertheless, please do bear with me and my co-mediator as we guide you through this process of mediation that we are about to indulge in. I do note and welcome to see that both of the parties have their legal counsels by their side, whom I am sure have advised you on the merits of mediation. Me and my co-mediator are aware that the parties have temporarily agreed to this formal and professional international mediation. If this session fails, and I hope that does not happen, will result in Yalib and Yakut submitting the dispute to the International Tribunal for the Law of the Sea under Article 287 of UNCLOS. At this juncture, thus, I would like to remind the parties of the merits of this mediation process. Not only is it cheap and accessible, but it also provides space for an exploration of possibilities, for discussion. It allows you to take hold of how to resolve your conflict in a manner that is amicable to both of the parties present here, something that is not possible in a litigation process. It allows both the parties to keep these matters out of the public eye, and I believe that this also protects their reputation, something which is of substantial matter to both the parties. We hope that you make the best use of this process in which us mediators, me alongside Pooja, will be acting as facilitators of communication to you. Now I would like to pass on the floor to Pooja to guide you through the process and principles of mediation. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much for that introduction, Sanskriti. Hello, everyone. My name is Ms. Pooja Pillai. You can call me Pooja.
How is everyone first doing today? It's been a long day. Is everyone good? Thumbs up. Yes?
Yes, yeah.
Yes, that's good to know. So I'll be your co-mediator along with Sanskriti for today's session. Firstly, I would like to extend my heartiest appreciation to both the parties for coming to this mediation session. The fact that all of you are at this table today, that merely shows how much willing you are and the drive to find a common resolution. And I also appreciate and thank you for entrusting the co-mediator and I with this mediation session. Your co-mediator and I have more than a decade of experience in mediation with international matters as well. So rest assured, you are in very good hands. Mediation is a tool to arrive at a common understanding, and it is a voluntary process. So while doing so, there is a 70% success rate. So it is a good option that you all have opted for. And I surely hope we come up with a resolution that is mutually beneficial for all the parties present here today. With that, there are some key elements your co-mediator and I would like to encourage. Firstly, your role as parties were here voluntarily, as was confirmed by Sanskriti earlier. So because you're here voluntarily, you should be willing to look past the past and look towards the future, towards compromising solutions. Secondly, confidentiality. Just like they say, what happens in Vegas stays in Vegas. What happens in this room will stay in this room. So rest assured, what you say to me or to the co-mediator will not be used against you in a court of law. Any notes that you may see me or Sanskriti taking will be torn right after this mediation session. So please feel comfortable and relaxed to say whatever you want to, because we are here to discuss your issues. Further, we are neutral and impartial members here. We are merely facilitators. So if you feel at any point of the session that we may be leaning towards one party over the other, please feel free to stop us and tell us that you feel this way, because that is not the intention of neither me nor Sanskriti. We are here to make you feel comfortable. And finally, everything that is said here is said so without prejudice. This means that your agreement is not to be assumed until you explicitly and expressly agree, which means that you have complete liberty to make any suggestions and any recommendations without having any fear of being bound by your words. And we have only one expectation from you today, and that is to have an open conversation with each other and to have an open conversation with us. So with that, I would like to talk about the role of mediators. Firstly, mediation is just a tool to arrive at a common understanding. Therefore, mediators here are not willing to impose any conditions on you. We are definitely not here to control you in any way possible. Therefore, feel free to make any resolutions that you want to make. And with that, I would like to go to the mediation process, how today will look for you. Firstly, after I finish making this opening statement, we will open the floor for discussion on the opening statement of both the parties. So after the opening parties make your own statements, we will now open the floor for agenda. In the agenda discussions, both the parties can add the agenda points that they feel is necessary to be discussed in the joint session. And throughout this entire session, me and your co-mediator will be there guiding you, asking you any questions that might offer you more clarity on this mediation session. But never are we trying to impose any ideas on you. So please feel free to speak up if you feel that. And further, you also have the option of opting for a private caucus with the mediators. And this caucus has an additional layer of confidentiality, which means that this is just a session for you guys to discuss with us any concerns that you might have, or to talk to us about anything to gain more clarity on the situation that is occurring. So please feel free to use this session to your best advantage, and anything that is said in that session will not be revealed to the other party until you tell us so, expressly and explicitly. And with that, we just hope you will reach an agreement today, and if not, hopefully something better will happen in the future. So with that, I would like to pass it back to Sanskriti for setting the ground rules for today's session.
Thank you, Pooja. Now to allow me to lay down a few ground rules for this session. I am emphasizing on the use of civil language throughout this session. Also, I do request the parties not to interrupt each other when one person is speaking. Also, please do mute yourself when you are not speaking. Now, next, what happens usually is that you bring us mediators up to the speed of the facts of the case, since we only have a very rudimentary understanding of what has been going on. Now, yes, please, Yali Banyakut.
Perhaps before we continue, could I also add another ground rule to the mediation session today?
Please,
So I
please.
realize that all parties today come from diverse cultural backgrounds. So perhaps I could also introduce a rule that parties were to speak slowly. So this will ensure that we can all understand each other better and help to facilitate today's mediation session if that's agreeable to all parties.
It certainly is, Audrey.
Thank you.
In that case, can we have a mechanism where we can raise our hands when we don't understand what someone is saying, and we can slow down when we see someone raising our hand? Yes, and this applies for the mediators as well. Please feel free to raise your hands at any point, but remaining times you may just unmute and speak. Just don't interrupt each other.
That's a very good suggestion. Thank you, Pooja.
Thank you. Thank you for the session. We'll keep that in mind as well. Now, what our rudimentary understanding is that there is a maritime dispute going on between Yalib and Yakut as a party and Tajib and Siri. All the countries have varying distributions of contributions of sectors such as energy, tourism, etc. in their economies. Therefore, they have varying dependencies on each other regarding the trading of resources. These conditions have evolved both from past historical events as well as some recent developments. There is also an involvement of countries in each other's affairs that has led to where we stand today. There is a dispute surrounding, and do correct me if I'm wrong, there is a dispute surrounding the territorial demarcation and the utilization of waters of the Mediterranean Sea. And there have been several agreements and treaties which have been signed between the countries, though not ratified necessarily. So now, as is customary and of course subject to an agreement between the parties, I would like Yalib and Yakut to begin first as the requesting party, if that is all right with Tajib and Sari. Thank you. On a similar note, I would also like to reassure both the party of Tajib and Sariq that you too shall be heard out, and your views and perspectives on the case shall also be noted down duly. So without further ado, I would like to pass on the floor to Yalib and Yakut party. Thank you.
Thank you, Pooja and Sanskriti, for your detailed explanation of the rules. You have made me more reassured of the mediation process today. Thank you as well to Paritoshika and Ishita for coming down to this mediation session to have a dialogue and a chance to work out a solution together. And of course, a very good morning, afternoon, evening to everyone, depending on where you may be. Paritoshika, as you know, every coin has two sides, and perhaps at this juncture, let me introduce myself and share the facts and what is important to me to give you, Paritoshika and Ishita, a better understanding. First, Paritoshika, my neighbor, you and I go way back. Yalib and Tajib share a long and rich history, having been shining jewels in powerful empires. Our countries have many common traits. Both of us are known for our rich fishing industry, used to catch some of the tastiest fish in this world. Shipping is also important to both of us, with the Mediterranean Sea as an important transit point for ships around the world. Most importantly, we have even worked together before and collaborated on important maritime security issues, such as fighting against pirates and smuggling. We have long been partners when it comes to matters regarding the sea, which is why, Paritoshika, I was shocked and I was quite taken aback when your country, Tajib, suddenly issued a presidential decree, taking away parts of my maritime zones and my land. Paritoshika, this was a move that came out of the blue, especially when Tajib did not talk to us or even share with us why this had happened. We would have thought that Tajib, a country that Yalib shares such an important maritime connection, would understand the critical role that the Mediterranean Sea plays as a resource for our nations. In this session, I wish to understand, Paritoshika, why the presidential decree on one side has happened. Notwithstanding this, since we are in mediation, I hope that we are able to set aside our differences and come together during negotiation to find common ground. In the spirit of mediation, you can be assured that we shall be forthcoming with you, and we do hope that you can also be forthcoming to us. in an interest-based mediation where we both move away from our original positions. Both of us came to this mediation table hoping to have a safe space to share and have an open conversation. Our deep-rooted maritime ties have stood the test of time, and I hope that with our country's best interests at heart, these connections will endure after the session. With that, I'll hand my time over to my trusted counsel, Audrey.
Hi, everyone. Thank you for coming down to today's virtual mediation session. Paritoshika, as Faith has highlighted, the new maritime boundaries set after the December 2022 delimitation move was a major concern to Yalip and Yakut. For many years, the maritime ties between Yalip and Tajib have contributed to the economic growth and prosperity of all countries. As such, she was extremely disappointed when she found out that you had set the new maritime boundaries without consulting her country. Nonetheless, she's at this table because they believe this is the best way for both of you to clarify the situation and work out a solution to the issue, ultimately achieving an outcome that serves your collective interests. As an advocate for Yalip and Yakut's interests, I have advised them on their position, though this should not be emphasized in today's session. The unilateral move done by Tajib was a violation of Yalip's and Yakut's territorial claim in the Eastern Mediterranean region. Further, it also contradicts the spirit of the United Nations Law of the Sea Convention. Accordingly, Yalip and Yakut do have a claim against Tajib and Siroj. Nonetheless, I would also like to highlight that given the country's strong historical and cultural connections, as well as their economic and security interests that have contributed to the development of strong maritime ties that have persisted for centuries, it is clear that all countries are able to coexist together and certainly continue to help each other economically. And this is something valuable, I believe, to focus on to align both your interests in today's mediation. With this in mind, Paritoshika, I hope that you will share in my client's collaborative spirit for today's session. Now, my client wishes to have a productive conversation about two topics. Mediator Puja and Sanskriti, I hope that you can help us to guide us through this conversation to ensure that we end up with a mutually beneficial resolution. Firstly, we would like to understand the decision behind the maritime borders. Secondly, we would like to discuss steps that we can take to move forward. I believe this will include discussing potential future plans that can align all countries' objectives. Faith views today as a chance to turn adversity into opportunity. And if this situation is resolved, for all countries to achieve even greater synergies. As the council representing Yalip and Yakut, I will be supporting its representative Faith through this session, although the decision-making power will ultimately rest with her. With that said, Mediator Puja and Sanskriti, Faith and I trust that we are in your good hands. And that's all from me. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Faith and Aubrey. That was a great introductory statement. But just to make sure all the parties are on the same page, I would like to give a fair summary of the events that have happened. Let me know if there are any corrections. So first, the client and the council had talked about the long historical ties between the two countries, Tajib and Yalip, and how you were disheartened by the presidential decree as you had not expected it. It was not precedented. So from there, you wanted to talk about two main points. Number one, how was the decision made regarding the maritime borders? And number two, what steps can we take now to move forward in a collaborative spirit, right? Would that be a fair summary of events?
Yes, that's accurate. Thank you so much, Puja.
Perfect, thank you. And now the responding party may give their opening statements.
A very good evening and very good afternoon to everyone. My name is Paritoshika, and today I'll be representing Derek and Karig interests today on this table. Now, thank you so much, Pooja and Sanskruti, for agreeing to mediate this session. We're really counting on your expertise to guide us through this mediation session. And thank you, Faith and Audrey, for agreeing to come here. I believe that this is a matter of international importance, and I hope that when we leave this table, we have some answers and clarifications. As a diplomat, I have always believed that failure is either a beginning or a middle, but it is never an end to any solution. And despite our past failures, I'm hoping that we conclude this mediation session on a note of trust and understanding. Now, I believe that it is important to acknowledge the different aspects that there are to this dispute. There are a lot of stakeholders, community, and economic concerns that are at stake. Therefore, this dispute just does not pertain to the parties that are present here, but have long-lasting implications for the entire Middle East and maybe also the world at large. TGIP's presidential decree was passed in December, and I believe that resulted in a lot of backlash from Lalib and Yakult. There was concerns about the goodwill behind the treaty, and we also heard concerns regarding how it was a treaty that was unilateral, and there were concerns around bias. However, TGIP has always believed that the Middle Eastern region is a shared space. And as a country, we believe that the economic region is not just for one country, but is a space where both and all countries can come together and collaborate so that there is mutual economic, social, and political growth. It is true, and I'm very delighted to know that Faith also believes that we have shared a very rich history when it comes to maritime disputes and resolving maritime disputes through mutual collaborations. When it comes to whether it was fishery or fighting against piracy, both the countries have always come together to develop state-of-the-art technology to address all of these concerns. And I believe the history itself is a testament enough to TGIP's goodwill. But coming back to the dispute at hand, I personally believe that the dispute has two major angles. There is an economic angle, and another is the national security angle. As TGIP's representative, and also speaking on behalf of Sariq, I can assure you that none of the decisions that were taken by any of the countries were decisions taken in haste or without any solid reasons. And we believe that today we are coming to this table so that we can have a transparent dialogue behind the treaties that were signed, behind the agreements that exist between the countries, and any future collaborations that we may work with. So on that note, I want to discuss two major things in this mediation session. First is the presidential decree that laid down the delimitation of the maritime waters. And under this, my council will elaborate what we want to discuss. And we want to discuss economic concerns as well as any future collaborations. Apart from that, I want to assure you that Ishita and I in this mediation session will make a constant and consistent effort to understand your needs and positions. And we'll make sure that the conversation is held in the interest of transparency and candor. Over to my counsel.
Thank you so much, Paratoshika, and a very good afternoon and good evening to everybody present here. I hope you're all keeping well. Firstly, thank you to the mediators, Sanskruti and Pooja, for agreeing to mediate the session today. I truly believe that your presence will be instrumental in helping us have a very principled negotiation that will keep us in line with the objectives of our session today. I'd also like to thank Faith and Audrey for joining us at the table today. Now, as a legal counsel, I have been a part of several mediation sessions. However, most of them have been domestic in nature, but I still believe the essence remains the same even at the table today, which is why I believe that this mediation session will lead to an open and informal conversation whereby both parties can discuss their respective interests and rebuild a cordial relationship that they have shared since time immemorial before, by brainstorming together and coming up to mutually beneficial solutions. Now, Paratoshika has already explained the reasons for coming to this table here, but I would just like to emphasize on certain events for the benefit of Pooja and Sanskriti, just so that they understand the entire issue a little better. Now, Tejas and Yalib have shared a good economic partnership historically on numerous fronts, as has already been stated. And this past has somehow been insufficient in negativing the current problems that have been suffered. The problems began in 2018 when there was an exclusive economic zone agreement signed between Yalib and Yakult, which made them a dominant power in the Middle East. Well, this dominant position seemed to be a threat to the position of Egypt and Syria, which is why they in turn had another economic zone from their side. They also believed this to be contrary to the principles of international law and unfair to the power dynamics within the Middle East. Now, while I'm here to represent both Tejas and Sadiq's interests, I would like to clarify that I'm only here in a fiduciary capacity, and the power to make all binding decisions rests solely with the chosen representative, that is Paratoshika. My role will be to address any technicalities or monetary aspects, if any arise. And since this is a client-driven process, I would also ensure that we don't bring up any legalities during our session today. Additionally, I would like to reiterate that today's session is completely confidential, and in an effort to protect the interests of both parties, since they are international players, we would be sending over an NDA for you to sign to maintain that level of confidentiality. Now, to reiterate the interests of Tejas and Sadiq at the table, and I would like it if the mediators would make a note of this, we are primarily looking to discuss two agenda points in this order of preference. First is discussing the delimitation based on the presidential decree, which was passed by Tejas. And second is to discuss economic and future collaborations between the four countries. With that, we would love to jump straight into the session.
Thank you so much. Sanskriti, would you like to give a summary?
I was unable to mute myself for a second. I'm sorry. So, what I'm going to give is a very brief summary of what Tejas and Sadiq have been representing. So they emphasize that this dispute involves various stakeholders who will have long-lasting implications of what comes out of the relationship between the countries. Tejas believes that the Mediterranean Sea is something which is a shared space. They are emphasizing on two major points, which is the discussion of the presidential decree that caused the delimitation issue, and the second is the economic and social factors which have been which they want to collaborate with you in the future. Would that be a fair summary?
Yes, Doctor.
Thank you. Now the parties may please proceed.
Perfect. Now I will share my screen and show the agenda. This is what I have gathered from what has happened so far. So please feel free to make all the corrections you feel necessary. So here's a map in case you want me to show it at any point of this dispute. But here you go. Here's the agenda. This was given by the requesting party and this was given by the responding party. The left is the requesting, right is responding. So now I've highlighted in the colors that you may find it, you may find commonalities, but please tell me what the final agenda should be now. It's the first agenda. Yes, go on.
Yeah, for the first agenda, I'm so sorry, Audrey. You can please go ahead.
Thank you. I see that we have accurately reflected what the parties intend to speak today, but at the same time, I think perhaps we can first, as mutually agreed between both parties, to speak about the delimitation first. I think that will help us to better understand what was the context behind this decision. Subsequent to it, I believe that we could start to look into the future collaboration. I think this is something that both parties are mutually interested to speak about. I know that the other party would like to speak about economic as well, and I think this could be subsumed under the overarching principle of the future collaboration. So I think this might be helpful for both parties.
Yes, thank you, Audrey. And I do agree with most of what Audrey has said. Along with that, in delimitation, we would like to discuss, like we could put this as subheadings, specifically two concerns, national security and economic factors. As well, if that is all right with the request.
Write it down for a diagrammatic representation, and then the parties can give their acceptance. So national security, economic implications, right? And what decision caused it. So I think this should go first if we are discussing it by way of logic, but let me know if you would like me to change that. So this is how it looks right now. Both the parties, how do you feel?
Before we proceed, I believe that the Yalib and Yakud party have been raising their hand. So if we could indulge with
Would
them.
you like me to slow down?
No, I would just like to, from what my understanding is that mediation is a very flexible process. And with that being said, my understanding is that there is no priority to anything that we speak about during this session. So perhaps I could trouble the mediators to change the numbering to bullet points so that all parties are aware that there is no priority. And this is really just a flexible agenda to guide the session later on.
All right, Aubrey, I hear your concern. So this is how the new agenda looks like. Is the TJIP and Sarig party okay with that?
Yes, we are.
So this is the new agenda. Can we give an acceptance, a verbal acceptance from both ends?
Yes, that's okay with
Yes,
us.
that's
Thank
All right, perfect. What about you, Sanskriti?
I believe that is a good agenda. That is what both of the parties have been emphasizing on. I believe both of the parties have a very similar approach towards what they want from the mediation session today. So it is good to see how both of the parties are in a synchronization when it comes to the agenda setting. Both of the parties want to discuss delimitation and future collaborations. So it is something which we should go on with, I believe. Thank you.
All right. Okay. So while I paste this into the chat, I'll send it to the host who will send it to all of you. We can open the floor for discussion on the delimitation aspect right now. The floor is yours. Either party may start.
Yeah, thank you so much, Sanskriti and Pooja. Firstly, I understand that one of the concerns is why we started with the delimitation and why the presidential decree was given and promulgated. Now, behind it, there were several reasons, but before we can jump into this conversation, I hope you don't mind if we clarify a few things. And a question that I believe will set the right tone for this entire mediation session, and that has been troubling me for some time is, could you just, I know that you signed, Yalib and Yakud signed a EEZ treaty in 2018. And the ostensible purpose of the treaty was collaboration in the maritime waters so that the economic activities could be expanded. But will it be okay if you could also tell me what the real purpose of the treaty was and what were the objectives of the treaty, and throw more light on how the treaty materialized?
Paritoshika, thank you for your question. As you've mentioned, the reason for our project was to conduct economical activities because there are resources in the sea, more specifically hydrocarbons, and that was what we were intending to use for economic activities. And as you've shared, you believe that the Mediterranean Sea is a shared space, which is why I'm struggling to understand the unilateral demarcation by TJIP that cut off part of the seas of Yalib. I've heard from you, Paritoshika, in your words that no decision was made with haste and without any reasons. So could you share why TJIP has demarcated the maritime borders without prior consultations or negotiations? Audrey, is there anything you'd like to add to that?
I think just to quickly summarize, perhaps you could just let us know why the demarcation of the maritime borders were done without consulting any of the neighboring countries, including Yalip and Yakup? Thank you.
Yeah, so thank you. It's good to hear that there were no ulterior motives behind the treaty. And I think one of the reasons, so there were majorly two aspects behind taking that decision. Firstly, as you've already pointed out, TGIP is a major leader for the OPEC. And historically, we have conducted and also facilitated trade between different countries. So when Yalip and Yakup signed the 2018 EEZ agreement, we believed that maybe some deliberation could have taken into consideration, as a large part of the maritime waters is something that we have operated unanimously in. We saw that it was part of the maritime water was historically been part of TGIP. And secondly, and at this place, I was hoping that we could talk a little bit more candidly about this. We had some concerns regarding the nuclear developments in Yalip, and because of which we took that particular decision. I'm sure my counsel can expound further on that.
Yes, certainly, Paratoshika. And just to further, firstly, summarize what Paratoshika was getting at, we believe, or at least TGIP and Sarik believe, that there have been certain agendas which were not completely disclosed with regards to the 2018 signing of the EEZ agreement between Yalip and Yakup. We have received information that one of the other agendas was to do nuclear exploration. And a nuclear exploration, given that all these four countries have major standing in the Middle East, a nuclear exploration by one country unilaterally without the other countries having knowledge of it, puts every country in a precarious position with regards to national security, and that further leads or it trickles down into economic and international standing as well, economic effects as well as international standing, which is why this concern and which is why this entire delimitation agreement was released by TGIP.
And building on that, I would also like to know the history, because there are also international standards for conducting nuclear weapons, but we don't want to get into the legalese of it, because here we have come to have an open dialogue between ourselves. So in that same vein, if you could also throw some light on the nuclear developments in regards to development in nuclear energy and equipments that Yalip has been engaging in for the last few years. It will really help us feel a little at ease.
Certainly, Paratoshika and Ishita, I hear where you are coming from, but in relation to this, I think what you, Ishita, you have just mentioned are very serious allegations and is very concerning to us. So perhaps you could share with us first, what is the source of this information that you have obtained and where did this evidence come from?
Yes, and Paratoshika, just before we go on to rest assured, we will talk about the nuclear issue. Can we just wrap things up regarding the demarcation first? Because you didn't tell us anything about the plans to demarcate, and we didn't have any prior consultations or negotiations when you raised the presidential decree, and it just seemed to come out of the blue. So maybe you could help us to understand your perspective better on that.
Yeah, thank you. So I'm sorry if I was not clear before. As we have explained, that the delimitation, the demarcation of the territorial waters was mainly motivated by national security concerns, and the concern, and it is. I'm also surprised that it comes as a surprise to you about the development of the nuclear weapons. But given that there are international protocols that usually countries comply with, and they usually promulgate and divulge information before undertaking serious nuclear energy exploration in the waters that are shared by the four countries, we felt compelled to take that decision because we felt threatened by the developments that were taking place, and we felt excluded from the table discussions, which pertained to a subject as serious as nuclear exploration. With regards to Audrey's question about the source, I'm sure Ishita can throw more light on that.
Definitely. To answer your question, Audrey, and because this is a confidential session, I do feel comfortable in disclosing this much, that we got this information from people in the top levels of the Taliban military themselves, who stated that these nuclear explorations were taking place, which is where we'd gotten this information. I hope that answers your question.
And just a further building on that, if we could come back to the question that whether these nuclear developments were taking place in Yalib and for how long the nuclear exploration was taking place, because in order to move further in the conversation and mediation, maybe we can talk about a little bit about delimitation and how to negotiate that once we have felt that we do not have the threat anymore of national security and territorial waters.
Before Yalib and Yakut could answer to that, I wanted to just show some clarity on what has happened so far. Right now, the main conflict that was between both the parties right now is the 2020 EEZ treaty about why, at least from the side of Yalib and Yakut, on why they were not included in this decision, right? And Tejip and Sariq said that it's because of national security reasons. However, their primary concern in the current situation is regarding the nuclear weapons. And so, considering we're not on the same page, do the parties have clarity on the 2020 EEZ treaty, especially Yalib and Yakut? Are you satisfied with the answer they gave?
Just one minute. I believe there is some correction. So the 2020 EEZ agreement is an agreement that was signed between TCHIP and Yakut. And I believe the concerns were regarding the presidential decree that was passed unilaterally and not regarding deliberations in the 2020 EEZ agreement.
Okay, all right. So considering that it is the presidential decree, I'm sorry. So are we in the same page regarding the presidential decree, Yalib and Yakut, on why they had decided to pass the decree?
No, we have not reached a satisfactory understanding as to why the presidential decree was done in the manner it was done by Tajib. But nevertheless, I believe that we have some questions regarding what you have just mentioned, Paritoshika. I hear that you say there are important international protocols for the action, but on my end, I understand that there are also important international protocols when it comes to delimitation. And could we just understand why do you not follow such international protocols? Because I believe that given how the countries are all neighboring countries and we have all had quite a long working relationship, there could have been prior consultations and negotiations to be done before delimitation. And I think this is especially important, and I believe, Faith, you would like to.
Yes, thank you, Audrey. Paritoshika, if there were national security concerns, could you share more on why you didn't raise it up to us first before taking away our seas? Could we get more details on this high-level source you're talking about as well? The high-level sources of the regarding the nuclear issue. But first, could you please answer us on the demarcation? And we'll move to that.
Certainly, Faith and Audrey, but before we answer your questions, could we please request the mediators for a caucus?
Sure, we would be happy to have you. If the supervisor may please put us in a breakout room. Thank you.
SKMC 091 needs to be sent to a different breakout room. Host, are we audible?
Yes, I'm creating it. Just a minute.
Yes. So before we start with the private caucus, just know that everything that is said in this room is bound by an additional layer of confidentiality, and that anything you say here, we will not reveal to the other parties unless you expressly wish to do so.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Pooja and Sanskriti. I had to take this caucus because I believe that the conversation was being is not going in a forward and progressive direction. So, as you already know, we reiterated the questions regarding the nuclear energy twice in the session. And we understand that the parties are not comfortable with talking about this, but it will be very difficult to move ahead in the session without resolving the question, because I understand that there were concerns regarding unilateral decision, but we are not here to go into the past and talk about who did what and play a blame game. We want to move forward and discuss whether this presidential decree could be changed. But before that, we need certain assurances from the other party. And because this is a confidential session, I also have some concerns and some information that I personally believe, is something I personally believe is quite important. So we have concerns regarding Yalib's intention for accumulating the nuclear weapons, and Ishita maybe can elaborate on that.
Yeah, certainly, Paratoshika. So just to give you a little bit of context with, or even substantiate why we took this unilateral decision, firstly, it was because of there was an urgency to protect our national sovereignty and security, mostly because we got to know from these sources that I've already disclosed previously, that Yalib's intentions were to invade Egypt for our past actions in supporting rebellions in the country. So this was a major concern for us, which is why we took the decision for delimitation. And while we have addressed the fact that it was an urgent issue of national security, they still seem hesitant or dissatisfied with this answer. But we would like for the conversation to move forward so that we can address how this delimitation can move from becoming an issue to something that both countries can work on together.
Building on that, I believe that a reason for not consulting Yalib before going ahead with this presidential decree was because there is no common forum for the four countries themselves where we could have brought up this concern, given that the four countries are a major player in the Eastern Mediterranean region. And
would that be something you would propose, a common forum for these four countries?
Definitely, that's something that we want to propose. And unless Yalib and also Yalib has been getting some sort of support from other countries in terms of advancing their agendas for nuclear exploration. We also believe that the EEZ treaty, which was signed between Yalib and Yakur in 2018, the main purpose of that treaty was not to, the ostensible purpose was maritime exploration. But we also suspect that an ulterior purpose behind that treaty was nuclear exploration. And you can understand why this air of mistrust and confusion could inhibit us from confiding in them our concerns regarding our territorial waters and territory, and also even our citizens to an extent. So if it's okay, can we move the conversation ahead by giving the Yalib and Geekwood, to a chance to explain why they started with the nuclear exploration without divulging it and without making other parties privy to that project?
Understood. So the main reason why I diverted the topic back to what they were saying was because I don't think they quite understood why you were bringing up the nuclear weapons. And quite frankly, even I didn't until now, which I think has a very reasonable connection, right? But I don't think they understand exactly the gravity of what you are talking about in terms of national security. So for as a neutral party, I suggest that if you want them to understand that you had closed, the presidential decree was regarding the national security, you're going to have to connect the nuclear weapons with the national security aspect and let them know that this is their concern for you to have a productive discussion about their nuclear weapons. Is that understandable?
I believe there is also something else which Tijib and Sirik I propose could emphasize on, was that there was no common forum to discuss this treaty in the first place. So maybe that was also a part of the reason why the countries had not come together to discuss the EEZ treaty. Following
Right.
from that, maybe you could divulge upon the need for reassurances regarding the treaty which had been signed by Yalib and Yakub.
Right. So while we agree that even in the 2018 treaty and the 2020 treaty, there was never a common forum for all four countries to come together and discuss common benefits. Right now, your main concern is nuclear weapons, right? So for you to get there, I think the party needs to communicate clearly why the nuclear weapons are connected to the maritime concerns we're concerned with in the present case. Does that make sense?
Yes,
That does.
thank you, Pooja. Thank you, Sanskriti. This is really helpful. I hope that after this caucus, the mediation session proceeds in that manner.
Yes, definitely. And don't worry, we won't reveal any of this information. You may do so on your own, but do let us know if there's something you do want us to tell them.
And Pooja, if I may, just like after this caucus, if you could create a space for us to have this conversation and steer us in that direction, that would be really appreciated.
Perfect. That we could do that. Sanskriti and I will make sure this is a topic of discussion. Is that it, Sanskriti?
I believe
Right.
that we could exploit the fact that there was no common forum wherein the parties could discuss, and by doing so, they could also reassure each other on where they stand regarding the treaties.
So we could start with.
It could be a good place to start if that's all right.
Thank you so much for having this focus with us.
Of course. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for sharing the information with us. Supervisor, if we may please have Yalib and Yakut back into this joint session. Thank you.
Yes, they are coming in a few seconds.
Thank you so much for stepping out. So we had discussed on the relevance of why the party keeps bringing up the nuclear weapons. And I will allow the party to explain that on their own. But they believe strongly that discussing the nuclear weapons is productive towards the discussions on the maritime border. So if that is okay with Yalib and Yakut, we now open the discussion for nuclear weapons.
Perhaps before we continue that, we would like to also go into a private session with the mediators. We believe that there are certain things that my client Faith would like to share with the mediators in private, and how this will also help to advance the mediation session when we are back. So could we please call for a private caucus as well? Thank you.
We would be glad to have you in a caucus. If the supervisor may please allow us.
Team SKMC003 needs to go into a breakout room. Hello, thank you for having the private caucus with us. And just know that this is an additional layer of confidentiality in this room. So anything you tell us will not be revealed outside unless you explicitly and expressly say so.
Thank you for the assurance, Pooja, and thank you for having this session with us. I think at this point, we are rather concerned because we feel like the mediation session has not been progressing thus far, and they appear to be avoiding some of the very important questions that we wish to be discussed in today's session. And perhaps, Faith, I could get you to share your perspective.
Thanks, Audrey. Thank you, Pooja and Sanskriti, for moving us to this private space where we can just share our thoughts in a safe environment. Well, I think we've asked a few times about the delimitation decisions, but we don't seem to be getting any answers. And moreover, they mentioned about nuclear weapons and development, but there has been no evidence on this.
And on this note, I believe that most of the questions that we have been trying to ask them have been avoided. But more so than that, they have been touching on questions on our national security, which we think are very serious matters. I believe that they are also a very powerful entity and a powerful empire. So certainly they ought to know that these are matters of national security and are very sensitive to be discussed today. But nonetheless, I believe that Faith would like to chime in on that.
Yes, thanks, Audrey. So I think what we can do to bring us forward, in the discussion is that we can carry out an investigation on the sources of evidence that they have gotten that investigation from, so that we can really find out what happened and address our concerns here.
I think as neutral third parties, Puja and Sanskriti, I believe that perhaps you could share with us more on what you see this and whether, like, given the escalating tension going around in the session, whether you see a way we can move forward this discussion and whether the option that Faith proposes will help to advance it.
Right. Okay. So from what I've heard so far, the main primary concern for the other party is regarding their national security, which is why they believe that it is necessary to talk about nuclear weapons. But if Yalib and Yakut strongly believe that the source of this needs to be investigated, then I believe the parties can come to a consensus on that if they're both okay with it, on the validity of it, because I think that's all they do need at the end of the day, the assurance that their country is in a safe hand, right? So in order to do so, I think that committee idea is wonderful in the sense that it will allow us to understand whether the nuclear weapons are there or not. So that is something you could definitely propose. Would you like to do that yourself, or would you like us to do it?
We would be grateful if you could keep the discussion today confidential, and certainly my client Faith would like to be discussing it on herself. But I think subsequent to this, as much as we would go and discover as to the questions that they have, and we will certainly give them the assurance of it. But I think the problem here kind of lies in the fact that they have been avoiding the question on the delimitation decision. And I think this is something that Faith, maybe you want to chime in on.
I think after we settle the point on the nuclear issue, perhaps we can just move forward and talk about that. And perhaps you could give us space once we have finished the discussion on national security and so on to talk about that.
I think both of the parties present here have a concern regarding the assurance part. And I believe that in this mediation session, something both of the parties could possibly work upon is how to give each other this reassurance that they shall be involved, and whenever such decisions are made or treaties are made regarding territorial or national security issues, both of the parties are in touch with what's going on. I think that is something both of the parties have been emphasizing on. There's this some sort of a communication gap between both of the parties. So none of the I believe that no party is at fault for the same. So I believe that is something which both of the parties could go on about. And I think the idea of carrying out an investigation report in this direction of reassurance would be a good idea to go on with, if you could exploit the same. Thank you.
Yes.
Further, I believe that, yes, go on. Sorry, Faith, go ahead.
Puja, please go.
So I was just going to say that this concern regarding delimitation, right? So as soon as, like Sanskriti also said, as soon as the assurance aspect of it is discussed and both of you have assurance that you are safe to each other and there is no tension there, I think delimitation is a natural outcome. So for me, if your party wants to move forward to talk about delimitation, you are going to have to clear the air about the nuclear weapons, which I feel like the other party is very much concerned with. So first, let's, when we open the discussion back, talk about the nuclear weapons, your thoughts on it, and you can suggest the committee to investigate on that. And once the other party is clear that there is no fear in that sense, we can progress towards the delimitation aspect. Does that sound good?
Perhaps before we return back to the joint session, I would just like to clarify. So mainly we are not so much on giving an assurance as to the nuclear weapons or so forth, but we feel like currently the negotiation has progressed in a manner whereby the other party has been providing some allegations that seem to be unfounded, given that the EEZ that was entered into in 2018 was done for economic reasons, as already explained by Faith earlier on. So on that light, I think what we would like to do instead is, as Faith suggested earlier, is that she will guarantee that she will definitely carry out an investigation on the sources of evidence. So this will help to declutter all of these allegations that has been surfacing, and we assure them that we will definitely investigate into their sources. So by doing so, I believe this will help to clarify and to let them know that we are actually not involved in such matters, but instead on economic reasons. And certainly after that, we think that it will be beneficial if the mediators could help to create some space for us to also discuss our concerns on the issue of the delimitation. And subsequently after that, maybe we could talk about future prospects if that's possible.
Definitely, considering the paucity of time as well, I really do hope that the parties can solve their problems regarding the national security, and that we can move towards a more fruitful discussion on the delimitation aspect as well. So keeping that in mind, I will remind both the parties to work towards the solution rather than focusing on the past once we go back into the joint session. And the party may definitely suggest the committee idea. I think Sanskriti also agrees that that is a great idea that you have come up with. So yes.
Just to make sure before the caucus ends, I'm assuming that what as mediators will do is give you a sort of communication space, like create a communication space so that you could discuss the delimitation issue. What I'm understanding is that we'll let you speak more on this point, and we'll not be revealing much from anything from this session. Is that correct?
Yes, that's correct. And in addition to that, perhaps we would just like to get an assurance from the mediators here today that you will keep everything that we have discussed here confidential before we return to the joint session.
It will be confidential.
Thank you. None of us will confide in this communication.
Thank you so much for stepping out, Tejip and Sari. So now we open the discussion back up to national security, and we suggested, owing to paucity of time, we come up with a solution quickly here rather than focusing on the past. And in the circumstance that we can't, that is okay, but we should move forward to the next agenda points as well. So with that said, I'm opening the discussion back for national security.
Yeah, thank you so much, Pooja and Sanskriti. I understand that we are still stuck on delimitation, but Audrey and Faith, there's something that I want to divulge at this level, and it's that we came to know from a trusted source, and please, I hope you do not deem it as an allegation because this is a private mediation session, but I think Audrey asked me a question before we entered into a caucus, that why we did not feel comfortable divulging our concerns to YALIB directly, and went ahead with a unilateral decision regarding delimitation exercise. And I feel that the answer to that is that when we came to know about your nuclear explorations and how you were not just expanding but also collaborating with other nation states with regards to building your nuclear equipment and technology, a trusted source told us that there was a potential risk of attack from YALIB to TGIP. And because there was such a huge threat to our territory, we felt that created a huge level of mistrust and suspicion between the two countries. And given that we do not have a common forum of YALIB, Yakur, TGIP, and Syriac, which usually operate in the Mediterranean region, we could not come directly and divulge this information because we did not know how you would take it, and also if YALIB, if this information could be used against us or how it will be used. So to rectify that aspect and to make sure that this does not happen in future and that each country feels comfortable in divulging their interests and their concerns to other countries, we propose a common forum for 4 countries, YALIB, Yakur, Syriac, and TGIP, which will work towards the economic, social, and national security benefits of both the countries, and also tap new regions where all of us can come together to collaborate. I'm sure Ishita has something to say on that, along that lines.
Yes, certainly, Paratoshika. And just to, for the benefit of Faith and Audrey, just to give a quick summary, the reason why this delimitation was unilateral was because of a lack of a forum. And today, what we're proposing is a creation of such a forum between the four nations in the Middle East, so that there can be an efficient, we can create the same kind of environment that we have today at this table in reality as well, beyond the four walls of this virtual room. And so that all international concerns or any regional disputes can be dealt with at that moment before it escalates into something more serious. So with that in mind, this forum that we are proposing is a forum that contains representatives from all these four countries, along with a neutral third party, which for at least the initial couple of years can meet on a quarterly basis to give any updates about any international developments, any domestic developments, any conflicts or concerns that they might have regionally, so that everybody is on, well, to put it very simply, on the same page with regards to what is happening with their neighboring countries, in an effort to maintain this international spirit and everybody can maintain their national sovereignties.
And building on that, if Audrey and Faith, could you elaborate on, again, the nuclear explorations and the equipments that you have built? And if we could get some assurances from your side that maybe if you could sign the international treaties which prevent parties from using such nuclear equipments, if you could throw some light on that, it would be really helpful.
Perhaps before we jump too quickly, I'm very heartened to see that the parties are willing to collaborate and to also advance today's discussion. But perhaps I think we could stay on the first agenda point first, as in relation to the one on the national security. So from what I'm hearing from you, Paritoshika, it seems that it was only a potential risk, and the unilateral delimitation was very sudden and shocking to our countries here. And I believe that making such a sudden and shocking decision will require more than just simply a possibility. Further, I would like to correct you on that. You mentioned that we have nuclear weapons and you would like us to sign a treaty for that. But I think it seems to me that all of this that you are saying are rather not backed up by any evidence, and it seems to be something that you are saying without any sources, and we find it to be quite alarming. But nevertheless, I think Faith would like to share more from her perspective.
Yes. Thank you, Audrey. Yes, she's right to say that this idea of yours, while it is a creative and interesting one, seems to be built on certain ideas that are not backed up by evidence. But rest assured, we do want to address national security concerns. So perhaps one option I can give to you to address this at its very root, I call it Project Seek the Truth, where we will find out whether, if it's only a potential risk, we can carry out investigations on the sources of evidence that you have gotten the information from, so that we can find out what happened, and we assure you we will investigate your source. Audrey?
Yep, so perhaps I could just help to crystallize what my client has just shared. So firstly, I think what we would like to say is that the unilateral delimitation action that came from you was very sudden and very shocking on our end. But nevertheless, we understand that you have gotten some sources which you are not able to really share with us, but we would also like to check on the credibility of it, which is why Faith has also shared her proposal, which is to start on the project of Seek the Truth, which will find out whether it was merely just potential risk. However, this will be done through an investigation on the sources of evidence that you have mentioned, and will definitely account to you, because as of now, our understanding is that the EEZ was entered into for economic reasons, and those that you mentioned of nuclear weapons seems to be rather unfounded on our end.
Yes, for 1 second, before the Paritoshika could comment on that, there have been two different ideas that have been put up here. TJIP and Tariq had suggested a forum to represent countries with a neutral party, and this was something that addressed the fact that both the treaties were made without addressing the other, or without acknowledging the other two countries, right? So this is something that addresses that issue regarding the treaties. But the suggestion put forward by Yalib and Yakut is regarding the nuclear weapons. participants, which is that while they agree that national security is important, they don't trust the source of it. So rather, they suggest a committee that would look into the authenticity of this source. And Tijab, what do you think about that? Actually investigating into the validity of the source that gave it to you.
Thank you, Pooja, for summarizing both the points. And I think our solutions are not too much different from one another because both of them are seeking transparency and ensuring credibility. So instead of, I think, which is something if Paratoshika agrees to it, is we could perhaps join these two initiatives and have the Seek the Truth as an investigative body be a part of this forum so that all the issues of transparency, credibility, and airing out regional concerns are addressed in the same way.
Thank you so much, Audrey and Faith, for bringing that up. I believe, and I think there was some confusion. Yes, I think I must have said that there was nuclear weapons, but we know that we got to know from the source that there was indeed nuclear energy, and that was used for building equipments and further technologies, and that also heightened the risk. Now, just to give you a little bit of more context as to why this source was reliable and why it was easy to believe that source, is because given the history of it, there have been 2 civil wars in Yalib, and I believe that apart from the great past that we share on the maritime front, where we have collaborated a lot, there still have been a lot of things that remained unsaid regarding our involvement, which was alleged by Yalib. So we came to know that the nuclear attack on our territory was probably a response by Yalib as a sort of way of avenging our involvement in Yalib's territory. And that is, I think, a huge reason. I am sure you can understand why it became difficult to communicate these concerns to Yalib. So for us to, so the delimitation exercise, the delimitation of the maritime waters occurred because we were concerned about our maritime, about our territory. And coming to the solutions that you have proposed, I understand that you have concerns regarding the sources, but as Ishita has already built up, maybe we can not just have an investigative agency that further elaborates on the sources, but also another agency and a part of it that explores whether countries are working on the nuclear energy and how they are utilizing their nuclear energy. Is that something that is amenable to you?
I think at this point in time, I'm very heartened to hear that you have a lot of options for us to advance our relationship. But perhaps before we reach that situation, I think currently we are a little concerned that you have been repeatedly making serious allegations on making nuclear energy sources that are intending to attack your country. We believe that these are matters of national security, which is very sensitive, and I'm sure, Ishita, you are aware of this. But nonetheless, I think what we are trying to say here today is that we would like to firstly separate these 2 issues and look at the first issue, which is addressing your concern about whether do we actually wanted to attack you. So that firstly has been reassured from you by Faith, who has proposed an option to you. And perhaps I could get Faith to share more about it.
Yes, thank you for accepting our offer to investigate the source. As regards, I think the foreign that you mentioned, I will definitely go back and think about it with the rest of my ministers. But of course, I also need to hear their opinions on it before I make a decision. Audrey?
And I think at this point in time, primarily, we would like to have us first investigate the source first, because I think all these concerns that you have been raising are quite serious, and we would want to be accountable to you on that as well, and not simply to just park it aside and deem it as though it is true because of a source that you claim has been true. So instead, please allow us perhaps some time to investigate the source as agreed by Paritoshika earlier. So I think on that note, we seem to have reached an agreement on the first agenda point, which is that on our side, we will go back to investigate the sources, and maybe the mediators, you could help us to put this into the chat box. So this can perhaps advance our mediation session because everyone will be clear on this solution that has been
Thank you so
reached.
much. I'm so sorry, Audrey, but yeah, it is true that we have agreed to making a committee, but it will be great if we could also have some say regarding the composition of such committee that will be investigating the sources. And apart from that, I believe it will be a holistic solution if it is also agreed that, and I think if it is also established that regardless of what the committee comes out with or what resources the committee comes out with, we have an additional committee under the same umbrella that investigates the usage of such nuclear weapons, because I understand that this is coming as a surprise to you. And given that YALIB, if it's not involved in any such activities, should also endorse a presence of such committees that will not only hold countries in the Mediterranean region accountable, but will also be behoveful for the community interests of the citizens as well as the larger nations. And building on that, another aspect is, and I want to understand, is regarding the economic explorations that you have been conducting, what kind of energy sources you have found in the Mediterranean zone and how you have utilized such energy sources?
Before we head on to the next point of agenda discussion, what we've come to so far is that there have been two committees proposed. One is for the investigation purposes of the nuclear weapons, and the other one is for discussion and a common forum. And while YALIB and YAKUT are open to discussing about the discussion forum in the future, they would first like to get an answer on the investigation committee, right? And to my knowledge, TGIP and Sarig have accepted to that. However, they need to have a say in the composition of this committee. So would that be something you would be open to discussing right now in this current session, or would you want to keep that for a later session?
We would like to first finish on talking about the investigation into the sources, because I believe it was the main reason why the unilateral delimitation clause was even put into demarcation, even came into place in the first place. And I think having a concrete answer as to what actually happened would help both parties to also advance and see how we can mutually collaborate. And on that note, I think, Faith, you would like to share your perspective.
Yes, Paritoshika, I think you mentioned that we should have a say in the investigation. I think this could be a little bit difficult because it seems to me from what you've said so far that you are already of the opinion that the source you heard from is trusted, whereas we need to know for ourselves the validity of this. So perhaps it will be better for us to find out with our own neutral team. And Audrey, is there anything you want to add to that?
So perhaps at this point, I'll just summarize quickly what my client has shared. I think the investigation body will primarily be conducted by my client herself, but rest assured that we will definitely keep you posted as to the process of the investigation, as well as to update you as to the conclusion of what is happening. And I think with that, it will be helpful that we can continue to discuss the findings from this investigation in the next mediation session. And on that note, I think Faith would like to address your earlier question.
Yes, Paritoshika, regarding your second question on the EEZ activities and energy sources. Well, regarding your concern on economic interest, just let me draft up a report perhaps on the hydrocarbon resources and update you, because I have to check on this with my economic minister.
Thank you so much, Audrey. The reason I asked the question was because, I think I should first address the committee aspect. I understand that the source comes from us, but given that there is an atmosphere of so much confusion and around us, and I also understand your reservations with regards to trusting us about the veracity of the source that we are telling you. However, I think it will be very reassuring to us if there were independent parties also involved in carrying out this investigation agency. I understand your reservations with regards to our involvement, but I think the committee can be expanded to bring in more members. And Ishita, would you have anything else to add?
No, just I agree with what Paratoshika has been saying. And just to add on to that further, the fact that you have felt that our involvement in this entire investigative process would hinder your own investigation into the credibility of the source. While I understand that completely, you have to understand that we also have a stake in this entire conversation. And it would be really accommodating of you to have perhaps an equal representation of all the parties involved in the Middle Eastern region. So it's not just Yalib and the other countries, Yakut, but instead all 4 Middle Eastern countries together having a say in this investigative body.
Yalib and Yakut, I hope you understand the concern they have. It is regarding the transparency of it. Would you be open to including a more equal representation of people in the committee to create better transparency on the investigation aspects?
Paratoshika, I understand your concern, but I think we will only agree to checking the investigation on your source with our team. As regards any further matter, let's discuss it in the next session, okay?
I think perhaps as of now, we could just park the solution that we have come to an agreement on, which is that Faith will go back and should definitely investigate into this source, and we'll bring back any findings that we have found in the next session. And during that session, we can perhaps discuss on these findings and see how we could move ahead. But with that, I think we have finished our discussion on national security. So perhaps we could move to your concern regarding economic interest next.
Before we move on further, I'm just trying to summarize what the parties have been going on about. So both of the parties are agreeing on having an investigation report being drafted, but the composition of committee has yet to be discussed about, which is something which both the parties are saying that should be an item on the agenda on the next session, I believe.
Yes.
Yes, and also I believe Yalib and Yakut will still conduct their own investigation and bring it to the table by next week. And Tejip and Sariq will have full liberty to analyze on the validity of it.
I think what both of the parties are agreeing upon here in substance is that both of the parties will go back, perhaps take a step back from this mediation and see what kind of information they are lacking and how they could go on about it and gathering it in a very neutral manner.
Yes, certainly. Thank you for succinctly summarizing this for us. So perhaps we could trouble you to just include this into the chat box to help us conclude this. But I'm conscious about the time. So perhaps I would like for us to move on to a proposal that Faith would like to share.
Before we do so, is everyone clear on the delimitation aspect of it, apart from the economic implications? Is delimitation something we're clear in both parties?
Sorry, Pooja, but I believe that before we discuss again the delimitation, and we already explained our reasons that I hope seemed cogent enough for going ahead with the presidential decree. If we could also come back to the solution regarding a joint platform for both the countries that we proposed, because before moving ahead with the second agenda, which is regarding our economic concerns, if it's okay, because I believe that a major part of why we are at this table together is because there were lapses in communication. I believe that had there been an effective and open communication mechanism for both of us to communicate our concerns, it would have been much smoother to navigate through the unexpected events. So I believe that if, as Ishita and I have already proposed, if we could have a joint body for all the 4 countries, which basically serve as a platform for each and every country to come together and collaborate on economic, social, and even political fronts.
I think we hear you on that, but perhaps Faith, you would like to share what do you think about her proposed solution?
I think it's definitely interesting. let me consider how we can build on it in the next session, perhaps.
Yalab and Yakut, if I may ask, what is making you hesitant about this proposal? Then we can maybe address the concern better.
I believe I have to talk to my other ministers regarding this first and hear their opinion on it before I can give you a decision. Because I'm not sure if there are any legal aspects to this. Audrey, perhaps you could advise.
Yep, certainly. I believe that when we are talking about something as large scale as a forum itself, we will definitely need to go back to check with our ministers to see if perhaps there is any limitation as to what is being canvassed in this forum and whether there are any other interests that will be involved. And I think in such situation, it might be better if we go back to have a concrete understanding from our ministers and see whether they will have potentially any concerns that we can erase over here so that we don't end up with any potential risk of constantly going back and forth about a solution. But on that note, because I'm quite conscious about the time, I think maybe one question that we would like to pose to you it was in relation to perhaps could you just help us to understand why do you make decisions to demarcate such zones even in the scenario where you were not fully clear on whether there was even nuclear weapons itself? And is it possible for you to perhaps remove the borders?
Thank you so much, Audrey. So I think one of the concerns, and I believe that we have been extremely transparent and candid coming to this conversation, and given the paucity of time, we would also like to end on the same note, is that the reasons that Yalab gave for expanding its nuclear exploration was that it did not have access to renewable energy sources and alternative renewable energy sources, which compelled representatives and the country to move in that direction. So when the exploration in the Mediterranean region started and the hydrocarbons were discovered, we grew concerned that whatever the exploration was with regards to was not exactly just extraction of the resources, but also extraction of those elements that could potentially further strengthen the nuclear exploration strategies of Yalab. And that is why we felt compelled to put those, to expand our territorial waters. And I think Ishita might have something to add on that.
Yes, certainly. So while I hear your concerns that you fear that these hydrocarbon resources may have been monopolized by us, but we're here also to alleviate any of these concerns. While that may have seemed like an like a possible incident in the past, at this table today, we are here to look at future thinking solutions as well. So in order for you to we would like you to feel a little more confident that you would also have a share of these resources. We propose a collaborative effort between the 4 countries whereby we can share these resources as well. This doesn't mean that we remove our control, but we also open the control. We give a little bit of control to you in order to explore these resources in the Eastern Mediterranean region.
And Faith and Audrey, I feel that for us to reach any conclusion, we have to meet each other halfway. And that is possible only when we see and we understand the positions that we are coming up from. So the reason why we also proposed the establishment of a committee, which I understand the bureaucratic and the procedural reasons behind not, but I believe that we should also not dismiss that particular idea, is because it serves and caters to your interests as well, given that the main reason behind expansion of nuclear exploration is absence of any alternative energy sources. What we can use this platform for is furthering the agenda of exploring alternative renewable resources, which will further decrease the reliance of Yalab on nuclear energy?
Just to crystallize what Paratoshika was getting at, since one of the since you have various uses of your nuclear energy, one of them being a civilian aspect as well, we would definitely help you collaborate in looking for more renewable, other renewable fuels which you can use instead of nuclear fuels in an effort so that all the 4 countries in the Middle East are just have a more equitable nuclear power balance.
TGP and Sadiq, I'm so sorry, Yaliban Yakut. Before we go to you, I would just like to state that considering that we have the committee investigation on hold that is going to come back by next week, maybe we could resume this argument regarding what we can do about the nuclear weapons found in the maritime exploration for next week after the committee report comes. Will that be a better way to go about this?
I think Paratoshika, that sounds like a
Yeah, but I think we will still need some assurances that this is the step we will proceed in, given the report comes next week. And I think we would love to hear from Faith and Audrey.
Yes, I see that there is a lot of discussion going on, and it's definitely with such a limited time span, it's difficult for us to discuss into the intricacies of every solution. But nonetheless, I believe that Faith would like to share more.
Yes, thank you, Audrey. And thank you, Paratoshika, for your ideas. I think it's a great starting point that, and I'm very heartened to hear that we are here in the spirit of collaboration. And to that, I think we can meet halfway because this actually aligns a lot with an option of mine. I call it Sea of Opportunities. And to that, I understand there are many different parts of the ocean. And in light of this, perhaps we can have a joint collaboration to explore these areas to find new opportunities for new natural resources for shared prosperity. And to this, perhaps we can give the research and the expertise, and perhaps you can help with investments also.
And I think perhaps at this juncture, given that so much things have been discussed in today's session, I will just quickly sum up my client's position. I noticed that you have raised quite a number of solutions on the forum, and I believe this is something that Faith would like to bring back to her board of ministers to go through, and we'll definitely give you an answer as to that next week. And given that there is an investigation that is ongoing, we would also like to share these findings of the investigation in the next session. And finally, I believe what she has shared is also the project of Sea of Opportunities. I believe Project Sea of Opportunities will help to mutually advance both of your interests and also help you guys to also exploit the oil resources that can be found. And nonetheless, I believe this would be a very good opportunity, and maybe the mediators could help us to sum up what has been shared.
Yes, and I'm so sorry, Sanskriti, but this is the last opportunity to agree to the project of Sea Opportunity in this session. So if considering we only have about 3 minutes left actually, what does Yalib and Yakut think about that? And before that, Sanskriti wanted to say something.
Yeah, I was trying to summarize what all progress as asked for by Yalib and Yakut.
Sanskriti, I'm so sorry to interrupt you, but just to come to a finality with regards to the solutions that were just proposed, before you can give a summary, is that both parties have agreed to a future collaboration with the option that they provided and with the option that we provided. I think we can definitely inculcate both these into one coherent and cogent in one common body. So if you could put this in the chat box as having come to an agreement, that would be really great.
On the Sea of Opportunities?
Yes, Sea of Opportunities
regarding alternative
Yeah, you
renewable.
may do that.
So what I could do right now is I've been keeping track of what you guys have been discussing, and let me know if the settlement we've arrived at is right. And Sanskriti, please feel free to add on to the notes you had taken as well. So here, this was the agenda initially set. The highlights in green indicate the ones we have come to a common agreement in. Yes, Yalib and Yakut.
Yes, so sorry to interrupt, Pooja. We just want to make a very important clarification that regarding this Sea of Opportunities project, we're actually thinking of investigating the sea outside the EEZ because we believe that there's much more potential outside the EEZ. And, you know, the ocean is endless, as they say. We really want to look forward to new resources and new methods that we can all use towards a brighter future together.
So does this look good to Tijip and Sariq? New resources.
That's good, but I still believe that the solution is incomplete, and maybe we can brainstorm about aspects of which territorial waters would be explored by whom, and those sort of aspects of the solution we can explore further in the mediation session, given that we have paucity of time. So while it is very optimistic to hear that we both of us have agreed to a collaboration, maybe we can just map out the logistics in subsequent mediation sessions whenever the mediators and the councils are also free.
And just to summarize I'm so sorry, Sanskruti, if I just may, quickly, by not taking too much time. We've definitely made a lot of progress, and it's really glad to see both parties looking to a more collaborative approach, which can be taken forward in the next session. With that, Sanskruti, you please may continue.
Just to summarize in very short, what the both of the parties have agreed upon is that they shall be engaged in the formation of an investigation report. So the formation of the committee for such a report has not been clearly stated. Also, Yalib and Yakut are agreeing in principle on deliberating over the possibility of a creation of a common forum. So it has. So they are going to go back and come back in the next session on how they want to go about it. There is also
I hate
Is there a correction?
I hate to interrupt you, but just to quickly clarify, there might have been an error, which is independently from Yalib and Yakut. I think that would be create a committee for investigation, which is independently from Tajib and Sidrich.
noted.
But I regret that unfortunately the time is up. So
Yes.
I'm really grateful for the effort that the mediators have put in today's session. And thank you so much for that. Independently from Tajib. Thank you.
Also, thank you, everybody. Thank you to the mediators for helping us conduct this entire session so seamlessly. And thank you to Yalib and Yakut's representatives, Faith and Audrey. It was really great meeting you.
Yes, it was a wonderful session. And Sanskriti, were you done with your summary, or did you want to give a one-line summary of whatever is left?
I just wanted to add one more thing, that there has been a discussion regarding a sharing of resources through the common forum. I think we have made some great progress from not having anything to agree upon to here when we are agreeing upon the possible creation of a common forum. So this session has been one which has been very progressive, and I'm happy to note that both of the parties have done so well in doing so. Thank you.
Definitely. And I'm really glad both the parties could come to a common consensus on the fact that collaboration does exist. So if we could have the details of the next session emailed to me or Sanskriti, we could schedule that as soon as possible, where you guys could talk about the future collaboration aspects and the reports from the nuclear committee as well, right?
Certainly. Host another session if it's amenable to both the parties. Thank you.
Thank you.
We'll definitely do it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Misra and Sanskriti, for mediating today's session. Thank you, Paritoshika and Ishita, for coming down to talk to us.
Thank you. It was really regrettable that we could not finish what we wanted to speak, but looking forward to the next session.
Well done, everyone. Let's await our instructions to see what to do next. Do we have the room manager to advise us, please?
Yeah, thank you so much, all the respected judges, to joining us and sharing your precious time with us. So it's a humble request to do the kindly score first, then proceed with your feedback.
Thank you.
Would you be putting us back in the judges' room?
Yeah, sure, sir.
Please, thank you.
So we're going to go to the judges' room and talk about you and score you. Thank you for waiting for us. And we will return to give our comments about this amazing session. We're just awaiting right now our instructions to leave. Kind of like Star Trek, zoom me up, Scotty, somewhere else. Here we go. Thank you. We're coming back.
Yeah. So congratulations, all of you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you so much.
So, Kathleen, would you like to go first?
Oh, that's so nice of you. Thank you. Yes, congratulations. It was well done. It's the end of a tournament where all your energy is like, I'm exhausted from judging here in Italy. I can imagine how you feel. I want to say well done to everyone. You are all so smart, so intelligent. And I want to give comments about the overall culture of mediation. I'm going to give 3 or 4 things, but I promised my fellow judges I would be quick. With these multi-country issues, beginning of the mediation, do you have the power and authority to make decisions and you forgot the rest of it without contacting someone else is very important, because we found toward the end of the mediation, oh, sorry, I have to connect with my diplomats. That's not full authority. If I had been the mediator table to protect the culture of the mediation table, I would have ended nicely the mediation. And so thank you very much for saying that. We need to now schedule a second mediation where we can come back with our complete and full authority. So we need to pay attention, because people, yes, bring their multi-country cultures to the table, but we also have a mediation culture to protect. And it's the mediators who protect the culture of the table. Mediation is about building bridges, not saying no to questions that put provocation on the table, where now the lack of trust is actually rising because of that. And we are supposed to protect things like that. Thank you very much for saying you cannot reveal your source. And it seems like we need to have discussion about that. How is that for you to feel that a source can't be revealed that basically has a rumor against your country? As mediators, we protect our culture. And what's our culture? It's transparency. And so use of private sessions to get more transparency. And if we can't get that today at the mediation table because of multiple countries, it's okay. But we need to protect our culture of our mediation table and say, we need to reschedule. Please come back with more information. Please come back with the source, because, you know, NATO and diplomatic and all this kind of stuff, people have to protect their sources. And the mediation table is respectful of that, but still trying to get the transparency it needs to resolve these multi-country issues. So we allocate responsibility as mediators as we validate their words. We're validating, making them feel good because we understand, hear them clearly, but we're also allocating responsibility. You literally came to the table without your full authority. Okay, mediation needs to change. Mediation needs to end. Let's go ahead and schedule our second, as I said already. So this obstructionist stuff that blocks a mediation as mediators, we have to protect our culture. If we can't get through it, we've got to think of an option for our mediation table. So that's what I would like to basically, you know, if you have to check in with your economic minister, that's what I want to infuse on this, that we protect our culture, as well as taking care of our clients, as well as allocating responsibility, as well as making decisions that have full legal authorities at the end of the process. We want a real deal that people can follow. So that's what I would like you to understand from me, from the Western model of mediation. That's very important for the mediation table. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Kathy. So, Sudhir sir. Sir, you are muted.
Sorry. First, I extend my heartiest congratulations and best wishes to both the parties. Both of them, the requesting party and responding party, they perform very well. I think in my career as a mediator, I never performed like as both of you have performed. And I'm delighted to also notice the performance of both the mediator also. They were well prepared, well articulated, but sometimes we need to remember that the introduction part should not be very lengthy. And there should be pauses when we are moving from one point to another point. And the parties, contesting parties, they were well prepared. They articulated their ideas. With the facilitation of mediator, they were able to generate options, keeping in their view the underlying interest, what is in the interest of their nation, their economic interests, their other, the constitution of the committee. But I can say in my words that all of you who are the members of this responding and requesting team, they are good future as mediator. They can choose mediation as their career. over the litigation or any corporate assignment. And they can, all of you four can be the excellent mediator. And beside two mediator also, excellent performance. I'm really delighted. My best wishes and good luck to all of you. And this is not the form to find out the mistake and to be on the fault finding mission, because we need to encourage all the young participants, the young stakeholders in the institution of the mediation. Thank you. Thanks to all.
Thank you so much, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, sir. Aman, sir.
I would just like to add to what the other judges have said, that it was a good performance. Who kept us engaged throughout. We didn't get a, we weren't bored for a moment. So it was quite entertaining. But the only thing which I would like to highlight, something which is more general, that is about the structure, about the performance part of it. Whenever you're giving any, whether it's opening statement or inviting parties to share the perspective, it should be conversational. A good performance is one which flows seamlessly through its constituent parts. If you give a performance which identifies each segment, now I'm making the opening statement, or now they're going to make the opening statement, or this is going to be a caucus, or this is, you can introduce a caucus, but rather than highlighting and announcing what you'll be able to do, the focus is, it's not only unnatural, it serves to identify the structure or the constituent parts, as opposed to things that's flowing seamlessly from one into the other. So the opening statement is not a speech. It should not come across as a speech. It should be a conversation of the mediator with the parties. And in the process, slip in the ground rules. Similarly, and just inviting parties to share the perspective, rather than saying, okay, this is your opening statement, emphasizing you're giving opening statement, or you're giving a speech. Because now, okay, now we'll set the agenda. Again, you're highlighting the structure as opposed to it being part of a process. So generally speaking, this is something for both teams, and I've seen this in many competitions. At that level of the university, etc., you are taught that mediation is a structured process. This is the structure you're supposed to follow. But that is something you need to internalize and not let it come across whenever you're performing. Just go seamlessly from one part to the other, so that the person, the lay person, the client, doesn't really know in which direction you're taking them, or does not really know. Of course, you need to give a roadmap in your opening statement, but you don't need to identify each segment of the process for the clients or for the parties who are before you. Fine. But on the whole, a very good performance. Makes it very difficult for us to judge. So according to me, both teams are winners. But so that's the way I see it. All the best.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you so much, Aman, sir. Sumit, sir.
I think I agree with all the other judges. It was a fantastic performance by both the teams and both the mediators. Very articulate, very energetic, very forthright, and very very engaged in the whole process. I think we just want to sort of make one quick comment about how this works. Is also there's an iceberg. It's called the iceberg model, and I'm sure a lot of us have heard about this, and we use it in our own areas of practice. It's we have the conflict, so there is an issue which is trying to be resolved, and we're trying to sort of find what the interests are, what the unstated positions are, experiences are, the assumptions are, what the biases we come onto the mediation table, and the values and the needs. And of course, then we have our positions, which is the stated opinions and the strategies. And I think it was very well sort of, done, because, I remember having studied this area of law, the laws of the sea, in my international law courses. And I think it was very well played out, when you deal with international issues and international players, especially when you deal with countries, it is very challenging to find a common ground. But I think you guys did really well. There was shared values, there were interests and needs, and the collaborative strategies and solutions were sought to be found. Of course, everything cannot be sorted out on in one mediation session. However, it was very very well done, and congratulations to both the mediators and both the parties. Thank you.
Thank
Thank
you.
Yeah, thank you so much. So it is always a benefit to come in the last. So maximum is being covered by my co-judges. So I would like to congratulate both the parties and both the mediators. Very well done. Problem was not as that easy and not as that shorter. So I could see that how you performed, because I understand the in and out of this problem and how pretty you did justice with this problem. So it was done in a very realistic manner, and you people, let me tell you, for all 6 of you, for me, all you 6 are winners, right? And just have a smile on your face. Don't feel that you have come very far. You have come very far. See, in this competition, there were 100 teams, registered 100 teams. If you people are come here, so you have come very far. So pat your back and celebrate, this moment where you are right now. So really, I would like to give a big hand for all you 6 who have come very far, and you have compete 99, 98 teams, right? And I would like to tell you honestly one thing after seeing this, SK Misra 4.0, that you have raised the bar of this competition. And thank you so much for raising this bar. And it was very well done, very good communication skill, either verbal or non-verbal. It was, you have displayed a very good body language, and it was done in a very seamless manner. And the only thing which I would like to say in the end, because everything has been covered, I don't want to, stand in between, this recession, this recess and other things. So I would like to say that, see, in mediation, the only thing what we have to understand is that it is not to lock the interest, but it is for the unlocking multiple interest. This is the only thing we have to keep in our mind. So with this, again, I would like to congratulate all of you. And one thing that I would like to see is smiling faces when you leave this. Yeah. Thank you so much.
Thank
you so much.
Congratulations again. Good luck moving forward, and we hope to see you soon. And
Thank
reach out
you.
to us on LinkedIn. We're there. Just reach out to us.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
And I think you both should also, both the teams and both the mediators should also, congratulate each other for performing so well and give tough time to each other.
I definitely agree. The parties were so impressive. I was impressed while I was mediating. So good job, guys. And my co-mediator is very impressed with you as well.
Thank you so much. You guys were brilliant. It's such a huge honor to mediate and do this competition with all of you, and we're really honored. Thank you.
Really honored to share the stage with all of you
Yeah.
guys. Thank you so much.
Likewise, thank you so much for the very interesting round, and we really appreciate all that we could learn from this round today also.
Yes, and thank you to the judges for judging and for feedback.
Thank you.
So now, whenever we will be coming to Singapore, our trip will be on you.
Definitely, we look forward to seeing you here.
I have to go, everyone. Be blessed. Much love. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thank you so
Thank
much
you.
for
Thank
coming.
you so much, ma'am. Thank you, everyone. Thank you, judges.
Thank you all the judges for joining us and sharing your precious time with us, and all the participants who performed so well, and all the very best for your results. Thank you. Now you all can leave the session.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you
Thanks
so
so
much.
much.
Can we just have one clarification? Do we need to join another link for results, or will the results be released?
No,
online?
you have to join the session.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank
You
you.
have to join through
Thank
this
you so
game.
much. Congratulations
Thank
Thank
to
you so
everybody.
much.
Thank you.
Thanks a lot.
Bye. Bye-bye.